You are listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. This is where women in midlife come for inspiration, motivation, and sometimes a little education to help them flourish over 40. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Midlife with Courage. I'm Kim Benoit, your host. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me. Her name is Emma Ritchie. Welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and as you can hear, she is not from the States. She is from Australia. But why don't you tell us who you are, where in the world you are, now that I've said Australia, and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my background was I've been a TV producer for like 17 years. I'm actually from the UK, but I've been living in Australia for 17 years. So I came over here for work in Sydney, and I live in the beautiful Manly Beach. So yeah, you can't see it right now, but the beach is about 3 minutes away. So I'm very, very
Oh,
lucky to
nice.
live. And yeah, I've recently, like in the last 2 or 3 years, just started moving more so into working with people with their mindset. So doing coaching and hypnotherapy. And that's just because of, I used to witness people having complete meltdowns in the TV industry and just pushed to the brink. And yeah, that kind of led me to start studying around mindset and start looking at myself as well. And that's where I am today. Yeah.
Wonderful. I always ask my guests to tell us about a time when you felt courageous.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
When I felt courageous, I would probably say, even linking it to this year, of for me, and I know we're probably going to get into this a little bit more, but for me, being so unwell at the start of the year and being told by, very capable and very skilled medical professionals what was wrong with me, and yet still having the courage to push for answers and look for different approaches to what was going on with my health, because it was so tempting at so many times just to kind of like submit and give in and just be like, okay, this is what everyone's telling me is going on. I'm just going to go with the flow. And, here's the medications that have been offered, and I'm going to pick one of those. But yeah, I really can reflect on this year and look back and actually be like, nah, that took some real courage to get myself from where I was to where I am now. So yeah.
Yes. Oh, I so want to talk about that, and listeners will love to hear that story too. So let's just go back a little bit. Tell us your story. Where did you start? You said you're a TV producer, and I know that I've had other people who are in that industry on as guests, and I know it can be pretty cutthroat and busy.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I started off in London. I was working as like a production assistant. I always knew I wanted to be in TV. I just love the creative kind of industries. And then I got the opportunity to come over to Australia. And growing up in the UK, there are two shows that you always watch that are about Australia, and that is Home and Away and Neighbours. And they're really big shows in the UK. And so I used to come home from school, watch those shows, and just be like, I want to live in Australia when I'm older. And anyway, it all worked out. And I ended up working on those shows as well, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yeah, when I moved over, I went into the newsroom at one of the major networks over here. And so I worked in news and then slowly worked my way up and then went on to become a freelance producer. So worked on shows like MasterChef, The Amazing Race, Celebrity Apprentice, Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, all of those big kind of reality
Oh
formats.
my God.
And it's great when you're like really young and you're just like, I want to travel the world and see everything. And, it's amazing. But the issue that happens is that you go from one contract to another back to back. And those days when you're working, it's like you're on a daily deadline, it's like print newspapers or anything like that. So you're just working full on from 6 a.m. in the morning, sometimes till 10 o'clock at night. You just go, go, go. And again, it works when you want to have fun and you want to see the world. But when you're doing those shows back to back to back, that does accumulate and it does cause some issues in your body when you're not looking after yourself. And, obviously being around other people that are going through that, everyone's fatigued, everyone's tired, everyone's away from home. There's a higher level of like stress that you're around all the time. And, you can't help but take that on board as well. So it's an amazing industry and I highly recommend it to people in their 20s. But I think, it does take a toll, definitely, like a lot of big big industries.
Sure. So what led you to go into hypnotherapy? How did that all come about?
Yeah, well, I'd kind of probably about 12 years ago, when I was in TV, that's when I realized I really wanted to focus on my health. So I started practicing yoga, and then I ended up doing a couple of teacher training courses and, taught just very sporadically. But I guess I've always had this being around so much anxiety and being around so much stress. I'd always been really curious about like the mind and the mindset, and going through in my 20s and my late 20s especially, I actually suffered with panic attacks. I'd have a panic attack probably maybe once every 3 months. So I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that before.
Yes,
You
I
have,
have.
yeah. Yeah.
They're
Okay.
scary.
So yeah, so it's pretty scary. And I think the scary thing about it is you don't know when the next one's coming. So then you're almost scared of having a panic attack as well, which adds to it. But when I got into yoga, I realized that there was more to it. And I started looking into hypnotherapy, studied hypnotherapy. And since I've done that, like I've never had a panic attack since. And my stress levels are much lower, which is great. It's just been like one of those journeys of just really understanding myself and understanding where the anxiety was coming from, where the panic attacks were coming from. And it was actually my body really trying to tell me something. And I think that's something really beautiful for anyone who is struggling with anxiety, to actually realize it is just your body telling you that something is out of whack. And so it's seen as a really bad thing, but it's actually your body just doing its job. Your body's just going, something here is out of balance and something here is out of whack. And it's probably the way that you feel about yourself and what's going on in your mind that's causing it. So hypnotherapy helped me to like really understand the root cause of the anxiety. And, it's all childhood stuff, of course, it always
Of
is.
course.
Yeah. But that has just been a beautiful journey. And because I've been able to sort of heal myself through that, I now help other people as well. It's really special.
Yeah. So time and again, time and again. It's always listen to our bodies. Your body is trying to tell you something, and we don't listen. Like it
Mm.
takes us until it's really telling us something in a big way for us to listen and go, oh, wait, something's not right.
Yeah,
Like, why does that
absolutely.
happen?
Yeah, I really do believe, I think it's just an accumulation. It's almost like your base level gets to a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm coping with this. I've got to, it's my job, or, it's my family, or, you kind of get to this base level, and then it feels normal. And then you go to the next base level and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit more stressed than I usually am. And then that becomes normalized. And then I really do believe it's just an accumulation. And, the more that we ignore our bodies, the more our bodies, it's just going to build up and build up until, like you said, it's just like the rug's going to get pulled from under you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like how you said my two favorite words, root cause, because too many times, if you go to a Western doctor with symptoms, what they come up with for you is a medication, which there's nothing wrong with taking medications. That's not a judgment. It's just that does not address the real problem. And I think you agree
One
with me.
100%. Yeah, as you know, I've had very personal experience of that this year. And I do, I have so much respect for the Western medical system in terms of, if I break my leg tomorrow, touch wood, I won't, but, I'm
Yeah.
going straight to hospital when I know that there are incredibly skilled and qualified people there that can help me. I also have family who, like, lots of my family are nurses, and, they're in that industry because they care. But there is just such a huge gap. And I think the Western medicine system is really designed for taking care of people who are sick. And as I've discovered this year, there is a way that you won't need that if you look after your health. And
Ah,
that has been a big journey. Yeah.
okay. Should we get into that? Because I think it's
Sure.
fascinating what happened.
Yeah, of
Yeah. So
course.
tell us about that. What happened with you?
Yeah. So basically, last year in April, my cycle just didn't didn't come. And I've never had that before. I've never skipped a cycle. I've always, from the age of like 14, I have been spot on with my cycle. So it just stopped. And, I just turned 44. So I was kind of like, oh, this is a bit weird. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is the start of perimenopause, and it hadn't really been on my radar, but I was like, maybe that's what it is. And anyway, the next month I had to go away to New Zealand. I was working on the Alone series. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Alone. It's where they do this survival and they go out alone. And anyway, we were filming
Oh, okay.
over. So we were filming over in New Zealand and I was there for 3 months. And during that whole time, I didn't get a cycle. And then on top of that, I was taking care of people as they came out of this alone experience. And so I was kind of really switched on and just almost like in nurse mode. I was just like taking care of people. But I felt awful. I felt so bad. I had just really low. Like I had one day where I just could not get out of bed. Like I was so low and I was like, this is really strange. But I was away from home, I was away from friends, I was away from all this stuff. So I was like, maybe I'm just exhausted. I got back and I went to the doctor. And basically, they took a blood test, and I said, look, I don't feel well. I really want to cry all the time. I haven't had my cycle now for 5 months. And my doctor, who is a menopause specialist, was really wonderful. But she took a blood test. The results came back and she said, you're number one, very low in iron. And I was like, that makes sense. But she said, based on these results of your hormones, she said, your cycle is not coming back. You're actually in menopause. And I was just like,
Wow.
what the actual bleep? I was just like, hang on, I haven't even really studied perimenopause. I know it's something in my head that happens to women in their 50s. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, my mental health at that point just deteriorated. Like I had to stop working. I couldn't get out of bed. I had vertigo. My eyes broke out in styes on both eyes. It was
Oh my
horrendous.
goodness.
I had ulcers in my mouth. My lower back was just horrendous, like horrendous. Like I was like an old lady getting out of bed and then having vertigo. So this all happened over the course of like the next 2 months. I didn't work. I was very scared. I really, really, really was having what you would call, and I've never experienced this before, but like suicidal ideation, where
Hmm.
I was just like, there's no way out. And the crazy thing on top of all of that is like, I was walking into a room, I'd walk into my kitchen and I'd have complete and utter brain fog, like complete, no
Wow.
idea why I was there. So, all the textbooks and everything, and, the system was like, it's menopause, this is menopause. So I went back to the doctor 3 times. Each time I was in absolute bits. I was crying, I was all over the shop. And the first thing they offered me was an antidepressant. And they did talk about HRT. When they offered me the antidepressant, I absolutely believe that, any kind of medication is going to be beneficial in some way, shape, or form to someone who really, really needs it. And I really, at that stage, have never been so tempted to take it in my life. But my belief is you take it to balance you out so you can then get the answers. So, anyway, in the end, I decided to go on hormone replacement therapy, because yet again, I had been told you're in menopause now, even though I hadn't, they generally define menopause as 12 months without a cycle.
Right.
I was probably like at this stage, like 6 or 7 months without a cycle, but based on my blood test, that's why she said to me, it's not coming back. Anyway, so this year has just been bonkers. I've been working part-time, my finances have gone down the toilet, like everything has just fallen away. Like, I was trying to build up my body, but I was still exhausted all the time. And over the course of the last 6 months, I've just been like, there is just something else going on. So the hormone replacement therapy, the HRT, massively helped just to balance me out. But I
Mhm.
still did not feel like myself. And I was like, this is not going to be the rest of my life. I am not, if this is menopause, like this is madness. This cannot be menopause. I was like, it's just so I'm not me. And that is not how I want to live the rest of my life. Anyway, long story short, I've been doing acupuncture. I've been vegetarian since I was 12 years old. all the doctors were like, you need to start eating meat. I started eating meat again this year, like all these things.
Mhm.
And none of it worked, right? I just wasn't feeling any better. And eventually, I just started watching loads and loads of YouTube videos and came across an amazing man called Peter Crone, who's actually English guy, but he's based in America. And he goes under the name The Mind Architect. And his background is in Ayurvedic medicine.
Mhm.
And so Ayurveda is a 6,000-year-old ancient wisdom of life source, essentially. So it's like you study as a doctor to be an Ayurvedic doctor, but it treats you as an individual. And so as he's talking about this and saying, describing all these symptoms, all of a sudden I'm like, he's describing me. This is what I'm having. And I was like, but you've got to remember, I'm still in my mind, I'm still going, I've gone through menopause because I've got the blood test, I've got the evidence, I've got the doctors telling me, right? I'm on
Right.
HRT. So in my head, I'm like, I'm going to see this Ayurvedic doctor because I'm like, okay, there's this other stuff going on, but I've gone through early menopause, right? So I've gone to this doctor. Within 20 minutes, she's explaining to me. She takes my pulse. She looks at my tongue. She asks me a ton of questions. She's amazing. Dr. Shivani in Manly in Sydney, if anyone is listening. She's literally turned my life around. So she took my pulse, and within 20 minutes, she said to me, Emma, I think your cycles are going to come back. And what is actually going on with you is you actually have what is called a vata imbalance in your body. And so I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor, but just to explain, there are three kind of, I guess, constitutions we all have, which is Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And they essentially, I mean, I'm going to do this a disservice, but a Vata imbalance is essentially where there's too much dryness in your body. It leaves you scattered, it leaves you with brain fog, it leaves you overwhelmed and just full of like Vata people are more prone to anxiety, but it's caused by an accumulation of stress in your body. And she said, what's happened is it's impacted your liver and your large intestine. You're not absorbing nutrients, you're not absorbing minerals, you're not absorbing food properly. And so your body is now in this stage of aggravation. And this is where the depression's coming from because your liver's not working properly. You're not absorbing nutrients. You're low on iron. She goes, you could eat 5 steaks a day and your body is not going to absorb iron. And
Wow.
so, yeah. So here's the crazy bit
It gets crazier.
is
What?
it gets crazier. It gets crazier. So I walk out of there just going, hang on a minute. She's just told me that she doesn't think it's menopause. I was just like, whatever. I was like, I'm going to take the herbs, I'm going to follow the program. And I did that. And 5 days later, I got my cycle back.
Oh my goodness. She was right.
She was right. Yeah. So
Wow.
after 8 months of not having a cycle,
Mhm.
after going on HRT, and I have to say, I'm not blaming anyone. I chose to go on HRT and it really helped me. After being told by 3 different doctors that I had gone through menopause, Western doctors, after spending thousands of dollars after eating meat, after, cooking up mince in just anything I could to get iron into my body. Basically, in 5 days, my cycle came back, my whole system started to calm down, and it's been 3 months now. I'm a completely different person. I'm back at work, I'm working full time. I've got clients, I'm putting online courses together. I'm back at yoga 4 times a week. I'm socializing with my friends. It has just literally been the biggest turnaround ever. And it has just been such a big lesson to me around health and also just around how far we push ourselves and how when you are stressed, the 3 things that will happen is one, it will impact your reproductive system, it will impact your digestive system, and it will impact your immune system. So when you look at everything that happened to me, my cycle stopped. That was my reproductive system. My
Mhm.
liver and my large intestine weren't working properly. That's my digestive system. And I was breaking out in styes, breaking out in ulcers in my mouth. That was my immune system. And so my body was
Wow.
giving me all of these signs, and it was all stress related.
Wow. That's amazing. It floors me And I'm into essential oils, and what we always call alternative therapies are what we should be going to first. You
Hmm.
know, don't call them
Hmm.
alternative. They're what we started with before somebody got involved and said they wanted to make money off of
Yeah,
medicine.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, I do think they work hand in hand, like those
Yes.
two, the Western medicine. I'm not, but I also have now firsthand experience of going to a Western doctor with symptoms. And this was a menopause specialist
Yeah.
with symptoms. I went through 5 questions or 6 questions where she ticked a box. She took, she did everything right, but within her training. Okay. So it's like, she took the blood test, she looked at the stats, the evidence was like your hormones are, just absolutely shot to bits. Your cycle isn't coming back. So everything she did was evidence-based,
Sure.
but it didn't actually look at what was the bigger issue, which was like my entire body had an accumulation of stress in it that had impacted my liver and my large intestine. And I will say this, on one of the tests that she printed out at the bottom, it did flag something with my liver. And I asked her about it and she went, "Oh, that's nothing to worry about." And I'm
Oh,
like, that was the thing to worry about. Like if
oh,
you've got figures coming in and it's showing you've got like stuff going on and elevated, I think it's ALT in your
mhm.
liver, that is showing there is something going on with your liver. Like it's not something
Yeah.
like just dismiss it, it's not dangerous. It's like, no, this is the root cause. Like this is what was going on.
Okay, I'm a retired nurse. If a liver enzyme is out of whack, you check into it.
Yeah.
To me, that I mean, I would think, but okay, and so I'm gonna calm down about that. But good for you for saying no, something is not right. I know what you're telling me and I know what the evidence is, but I know my body and something here isn't right. And I wish
Yeah.
more people would do that.
Yeah, but I totally understand why you wouldn't as well. You've got this
Yeah.
person in authority who has spent years of their life studying, and is friendly and lovely to you. My GP is a beautiful person. And I think some people who've been going to their GP for decades, it's the family doctor, but it's like science moves on and not just science, it's like alternative therapies that have 5,000, 6,000 years, like Chinese medicine or like Ayurveda. Like there is so much wisdom in there. And they treat your body as an individual. So it's like if you and I go to a Western doctor with a cold, both of us will be told, drink some water, get some rest, take these pills.
Right.
If me and you go to an Ayurvedic doctor with a cold, they will take our pulse, look at our tongue, ask us questions. They will base what we need based on our doshas, based on our constitution, based on who we are as individuals, and how you're treated might be different to me. And that is the beautiful thing about these alternative medicines, even though they're not alternative, they're like incredible, they're ancient, and they've got so much wisdom in. It's like we're individuals, we're not the same, our bodies are different. And
Right.
so if there's any way, I know now there's a lot more holistic GPs and doctors, and they're really bringing in those alternative medicines. And I just think it's such a great thing if you've got access to someone like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that is that because it seems here in the United States that there are more of these alternative practitioners coming in, and we have a lot more functional medicine doctors. And so that sounds like that's kind of what's happening in Australia too.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more like of the integration going. I mean, there's
Nice.
still very separate, of course,
Hmm.
but I would also like just say, it's not about just going one way. If you're sick, it may be right now that you need the Western medicine system to look after you and get you back on your feet. But like these alternative medicines are health based, they're about getting you into a place so you're healthy, so you don't need to be sick. And even like the more that I'm learning about it, I mean, I'm just fascinated now because you Now it's like if I had continued on the path that I was on, which is taking HRT, my body was still in absolute aggravation and stress. I still wasn't feeling well. What would have happened with that imbalance in my body is it could have turned into autoimmune, it could have turned into cancer, it could have escalated and turned into degenerative things like Parkinson. When you understand the actual steps of health from an Ayurvedic point of view, like, I lost my dad to cancer when I was only 5 years old. And so now I'm like looking at him through the eyes of Ayurveda and being like, oh my goodness, like that disease went through accumulation, aggravation, and then it localized and then it manifested into cancer.
Sure.
But my dad would have gone through a process for that to have happened. And I can
Yeah.
only imagine it was probably stress related. So I'm looking at his life and what was going on for him back then. And this is the thing with disease. It's like, it's disease. It's a dis-ease in the body. And
Yeah.
that starts somewhere. The sooner that you can spot that, which I know is challenging,
Hmm.
and actually start to make changes at those early stages, the less chance it has to turn into a disease.
Yeah. How would you recommend to people if something's going on, what would they do for their first step?
I think the first thing is just trust yourself and trust your body. If you have people dismissing it, if you're like, I just don't feel right, and even friends of yours are dismissing it or going, yeah, I've been feeling a bit like that too. Like, just listen to yourself is the first thing. Like, if you feel something is not right, trust yourself. And
Hey, ladies. Today's guest, Emma Ritchie, has a wonderful online course coming. It's called Free Your Soul, and it's going to help you learn how to think big. Stop telling yourself those negative stories and just start living your life. Check it out at the link in the show notes to get on her wait list. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
from that point, obviously, I'm speaking very vaguely. There could be so many things that are going on with people. Maybe it's a mental health thing, maybe it is in your body, but I would then from that stage, obviously, if you're more prone to go down the Western medicine side and seek help that way, like do that. But I would also say, like, really have a look into Ayurveda, really have a look into Chinese medicine. And for me, this is a big thing actually that I realized was, like, especially as women, our friends are like, lose weight and get ripped. And we're like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, I want to
Yeah.
copy that and I want to do that. And we do it, right? And I
Hmm.
realized what has been right for my friends has been terrible for me because of Ayurveda and understanding, like, so for example, and again, I'm literally giving a snapshot of Ayurveda, but because I'm what is called a Vata dosha, that means it's connected to the elements essentially. But my body, I would drink cold water with my meals, I would have cold water when I woke up, I would drink a lot of cold drinks, and it is the worst thing for my body ever for me to drink or have anything cold. So I was having salads because my friends were like looking great and eating these amazing salads. Salads for me are not good for my body because they're colder. And so all of my food has to be warm. And this is, again, this is just me. So
Right.
you understand about Ayurveda, like somebody who is like Pitta, they are more fire, like that dosha is fire based. So they love spice, but it's actually the worst thing for them. They should not be
Oh,
having it. They've already got too much heat in their body, where
okay.
my element vata is air and space. So if I fast, for example, it's really bad for me. But somebody with a different dosha, fasting is really good for them. So fasting's bad for me because I already have a lot of air and space in my body. So if I'm not eating, that's creating air and space in my body, and that causes bloating, that causes inflammation. It's fascinating. I mean,
Oh
it's,
my gosh.
yeah.
There's
So
so
I would
much to it.
there's so much. There's so much. I mean, my doctor, Dr. Shivani, she's from India and she studied over there and she's still studying. She's been studying for like 10 years. It's incredible the layers to this ancient wisdom. So
Yeah.
In answer to your question, if somebody does have something going on, first thing, trust yourself. Don't listen to anybody else. Don't listen to someone saying or dismissing it or telling you you're overreacting. If you don't feel right, listen to yourself, trust yourself. And that includes doctors, if someone's telling you something's not right. And then the second thing that I would do is I would either seek out Ayurveda. That's just from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to an Ayurvedic doctor or Ayurveda, then I would first of all look at gut health and whether that's with a nutritionist or a naturopath. I think, we've heard about it so much, but your gut health will affect your mindset. It will affect depression. It will affect anxiety. It will affect how you're absorbing foods. It will affect everything. So if you're not feeling right, there is a very good chance that it is connected to your gut as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important for people to know that they can check out these different therapies and try the Ayurveda or acupuncture and see what works for you. What, because you might find one works for you and one doesn't, but you have to try them or learn more, at least
Exactly.
learn more about them, you know,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
kind of,
And that's the thing, there's so much information online. Like, even if at the moment, if you can't afford to like seek out and have a one-on-one with a doctor or anything like that, like we have YouTube, like just basically go on there, put in Ayurveda or put in Chinese medicine or put in, natural therapies to help depression, whatever it is. Like
yeah,
the most important thing to know is that you actually are in a position of power, even though you can feel really hopeless. There are resources out there, there are free resources out there. And yeah, you may not be getting that one-on-one consult and that one-on-one focus, but you can start, you can do something. So if you don't feel well, and what I'm saying as well with like YouTube, obviously everyone's got a YouTube channel these days, but
sure.
like spend some time finding somebody reputable in that area, like watch a
Yes.
few videos, just watch someone who's like 15 and talking about, something. And I'm not poo-pooing 15-year-olds. I'm just saying like somebody who's got life experience, who's studied, who understands what they talk, really understands, their skill, and
Right.
find those people on YouTube. Don't just follow anyone just because they're doing an Ayurvedic video.
Right. Yes, for sure. And we are not giving medical advice. I will put that out here just so everybody
Absolutely.
knows. Yeah. So, how do you help other people? Let's talk about your services that you provide. How do you help them?
Yeah, so I mean, what I do, if I was to put it in a nutshell, it's to unlock people's potential, essentially.
Mm.
And that can be, for an example, if somebody comes to me with a problem, so let's say it's anxiety, what I do is I help them to realize and help them to understand the root cause of that through like hypnotherapy or through coaching. So
Okay.
again, anxiety is just your body giving you a sign. And the two things, the place where anxiety really lives is in the belief, deep down, the subconscious belief that I'm not safe and I'm not going to be okay.
Mhm.
That's where anxiety lives, and it is future based. So a lot of the work that I do is to help people to understand the root cause of where that comes from. It's always childhood. But, let's say somebody comes to me and they've got anxiety through work, and they're really stressed and they're just anxious and they've got performance issues and, they're terrified about doing a presentation. Basically, through the work that I do, I help them understand the root cause of that. And it's not the presentation, it's
Yeah.
not work. It's the fact that they actually deep down feel that they're not safe in that environment. There's something that they believe from childhood, like I'm going to be made fun of, or I'm not good enough, or there's some sort of comparison. It's always comes back to that. And once you understand the root cause, there are ways to just heal that and just integrate that and allow that part of you to be felt and seen. And that's really, really important because I think a lot of people want a really quick fix now for a lot of things. The big part of it is instead of just going, okay, well, I've dealt with that, it's integrating that part of you, that child who once upon a time was scared, or once upon a time thought that they were going to do something wrong or something bad was going to happen if they did something. And it's about actually sending so much love to that younger version of you. So it's a lot of different things, but essentially people come to me with a problem and they leave going, I don't have a problem anymore.
Nice. When we hear hypnotherapy, we think hypnotize people, but I bet it's
Yes.
not that.
It's not. I think its reputation is changing a lot more now, but absolutely. I mean, when I first started studying it, I was like, oh God, hypnotherapy. But I had such a dramatic shift in my life because of it. And I was just like, I just cannot not use this to help other people. Even now, when I speak to people and say, oh, like I do hypnotherapy, people they're kind of curious, but they're scared of it. You know, there's a bit of like,
Sure.
oh, I don't know about that. And I think we've seen those big stage shows and people standing on one leg and all that kind of stuff. But it's absolutely not that. It's therapy. It is, you know, it's deeply relaxing. I'd probably describe the closest sensation to be able to describe it to is you do it every night anyway, because when you fall asleep and you're going into like REM, like rapid eye movement, hypnotherapy is exactly that sensation. So you're actually going into hypnotherapy every night anyway. The only difference is with hypnotherapy is the hypnotherapist will be talking to you and be aware of like where you are. And with the work that I do as well, I actually talk to people and people talk back. So it's almost like the sensation of like, you know, when your alarm goes off and then you're kind of like that, that's the sensation you have.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So do you work with people in person, over Zoom? How do you work with them usually?
Yeah, so mainly it's in person for the specific type of hypnotherapy that I do, but
Okay.
I do a couple of other types of hypnotherapy, which I'm really happy to do over Zoom. And then I do a beautiful kind of coaching as well around mindset, and that is very language based. That's really cool. I'm very excited. I'm just about to launch an online course,
Oh,
which will be
fun.
coming up. I know, I think in about 2 weeks it should be completed. So that's going up. And yeah, that's called Free Your Soul. And that's a really great starting place for people to actually understand their ego, to understand like where these beliefs come from and where the limitations all sit. But by the end of it, you literally have like, I call them aligned actions to take.
Okay.
To move you away from where you are now. So yeah, that's really exciting.
Well, so by the time that this episode comes out, it will be out because it'll be at
Yeah,
least
I
two
mean,
weeks before it comes out. So we'll if I can get that link, I can put that in the show notes so people can find that and
oh, that'd be
check it
awesome,
out.
Kim. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send that over to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then I know you have a website. Do you want to share that and tell us what's on there too?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah. So my website is emma-ritchie.com. So www.emma-ritchie.com. And on there, I've got a really beautiful transformational manifestation audio that's available to download. I'm also launching my Free Your Soul 8-part course, which is incredible. And it really talks about just breaking through the ego, letting the soul come through and letting all that love and abundance and freedom and possibility come into your life. So that's really exciting. What else have I got? I've got, yeah, a couple of my one-on-one options. So one of them is called Free Your Mind, which is my sort of signature hypnotherapy 21-day program. And then I also have one-on-one coaching available on there as well. And that's available through Zoom.
Wonderful. Well, Emma, I hate to say goodbye, but
Oh.
before we say goodbye, is there any one last little message or a nugget of knowledge you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, it sounds so cheesy, but health is wealth. And I have had first experience this year of wealth going down the toilet when my health went down. And so I really cannot stress to anyone out there listening that if you are not feeling well, please trust yourself. Please keep looking for answers. You know, if certain systems or certain advice is not working for you, don't just seek a second opinion within that industry. Look outside of it. You know, keep searching for answers. And you can absolutely heal your body and you can heal your mind as well. So yeah, just don't give up and just know that there's people out there that can help you. And yeah, you can feel better.
Yes, great advice. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And if you want to learn more about Emma and what she's doing, go to her website and you will find that link in the show notes. Emma, thanks again so much for joining me today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kim. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Midlife with Courage. I hope you liked what you heard. If you did, I would love a review. Or even better, send the link of this episode to a friend. Until next time, take care of your beautiful self.